college was just starting when I was going, I absolutely would have tried it if it wasn't like the absolute brand new thing. Hello. If you want to work in a congregation, that's the best in the Reform movement. That's the best place to go to get. Okay, good. Yes. I'll call you. You will. I just wasn't sure. Yes, yes. And yeah, and just lift with the legs. Wait, what?
And they need to find an omnidirectional.
Right. I'm wearing flats today. Yeah.
Very relatively flat.
Yeah. Oh, those are nice. I love a wedge because I don't actually like wearing heels. So yeah.
Yeah, very comfy.
Yes. Good. Hello, Peanut Gallery.
Hook into your first input, not the mic level line, so that may be a part of it. Because your second line input is your mic line, so that may have had.
Oh, they plugged it to the wrong
They
one.
went into first input, and they had volume up, but either way, I think you're better off going to line two with the mic lines.
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, I had no idea. Bachelor might have invited us for apples and honey in the parking lot, so it might just be hard to get out. That was my.
We'll do the best efforts to keep everything in a timely fashion.
I think it's going to be like 3 families, so I'm not worried about us starting exactly on time. I can't start, well, I meant to say, we can't start with that.
Okay, so you know I'll be there.
I know you'll be. And I won't sweat it out in those last 5 years.
Okay, good. All right, that is on. Got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, that would be great. It is a nice turnout. I don't know what the turnout was. I'm celebrating the turnout. I totally know that we didn't have a super thing.
Didn't know if I was fast.
I don't even know. I should check this against a regular file. Figured I should wear the Fitbit today.
Shana Tova, page 110. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotav.
משכנותיך ישראל.
One second. Shana Tova. I'm Rabbi Leah Berkowitz. This is our cantorial soloist, Rebecca Schwartz, and we are so delighted to welcome you to Congregation Kol Ami to celebrate the new year. It is such a blessing for us to be together this year, both in these chairs and online. There are many things about this new year that are not quite as we had imagined them to be. But coming together is yet another reminder of what a gift it is to be part of a sacred community. If you're in the room with us, that community might feel a little smaller than usual, but I assure you we are only growing stronger in these challenging times. In addition to those in this room, we have people joining us online from all over the country and from all around the world, as far away, we know for sure, as far away as France. We opened our service with the words of the biblical sorcerer Balaam, who tried to curse our people but could only utter a blessing upon seeing the places where our community gathered. Millennia later, even in these strange times, the words still ring true. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Page 111. Ma tovu, how good they are, these tents of Jacob, how beautiful the homes where Israel dwells. And blessed are all who have a home, when so many yearn for shelter and for care. And blessed are we who share this house which shelters us where we belong, this house of Torah, this house of love, of sacred assembly and communal strength. In small and humble rooms, in splendid sanctuaries, and online all over the world, today our people greet the turning of the year. We stand with all of them this morning, grateful we're alive to meet this day, first dawning of the year. For all of us, no matter where we've traveled, come back to celebrate the season of return. Give praise to this morning, give thanks for our gathering, give ear to the ancient call that brings us home. Our hearts rise up in hope, our spirits reach for new beginnings. Our voices, too, lift up a melody that celebrates today. How good they are, these tents of Jacob. How beautiful the homes where Israel dwells. And now we have a Rosh Hashanah greeting from our founding Rabbi Elliot Holin.
Ma nishtana hashana. What makes this year different? In many ways it is different, and in many ways it is the same. A descent into similar frustrations we have felt before. How often have we said, in the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Come, let us reason together," without knowing to whom we might speak? At times it seems as if we have run out of words. We eloquent people, each of us a walking dictionary or thesaurus, filling out daily crossword puzzles, we seem bereft of words. But how is that possible? We are the people of the book. The fifth book is called Devarim, Deuteronomy, but in Hebrew it means words, containing the final words of Moses to our people. In Devarim is found the Shema, the grounding words of our faith. 6 words that are recited in Hebrew at every worship service. Also in Devarim is God's acceding to the people's request that they too have a king. After all, if the nations surrounding us have kings, why can we not have a king, O King of Kings? But God limited the king's power. He was not to have too many horses, so as to curtail his inclination to wage war. He was not to amass silver and gold to excess. God required the king to have a copy of Devarim next to his throne and to study it every day, because in it is contained the history of our people. our 40 years of wandering, the imperatives of the 10 Commandments, the healing power of repentance. Now we might ask ourselves, how was a king to find time every day to study Devarim? Pre-COVID, that was our question as well. But now we have more time, the blessing and the curse, as it were. Devarim points us toward our future. A wonderful opportunity presents itself. And I urge you to engage or re-engage with these words, to constantly, through study, be stimulated, inspired, yes, at times frustrated, perhaps irritated, occasionally transformed, but almost always to have your heart and your mind engaged. And I do so in the name of rabbis past and present, active and retired, whose lives have been transformed by the words of Torah. It is readily accessible. You know, we're reminded in words that we will read on Yom Kippur morning, it is not up in heaven that you shall ask yourselves, who will go to heaven for us and bring it back for us? And it's not across the seas that you shall ask, who shall go across the ocean and find it and bring it back for us? No, it is near you and readily accessible. It is a phone call or a click away on the URJ website, Union for Reform Judaism. And it's easy to remember as a call to you, Reform Jew. Order a copy for yourself, re-engage with the copy you have. Perhaps not every day like a king, but every week like the Torah portion. Ma nishtana hashana, this opportunity.
Thank you, Rabbi Holin. I'm about to give some instructions for our readers this morning so that we can actually study a little bit of Torah. And I thought this might be a good time for everyone to take your device out of your pocket or your purse and make sure that it is off. So for the most part, this year's readers will be live and in person. We have a few video guests. And we ask that when it's your turn to read, you're going to come up to the Torah table to use the microphone there. If you are with your own household, you may remove your mask to speak. If you're with multiple households, please leave it on. You're welcome to leave it on either way. Just make sure that you're speaking loudly and clearly and leaning into the microphone so that we can hear you, so people can hear you online, and also so that the closed captions can pick up what you're saying. And we also ask that throughout the service and afterwards, we avoid shaking hands or hugging people not in our households. Next year, hopefully, we will be able to do that again. But for now, we're going to give everybody a little bit of space. Our first readers on page 112, we invite up Michael Chernoff and Rhea Applebaum to give us the blessing for the study of Torah, followed by a little passage. Is this the wrong one? Right. Oh, so we'll say the blessing together and then you'll do this. Okay. We're going to say the blessing for study of Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
All year, we should see ourselves as though we are equally balanced between merit and guilt. And similarly, we should see the entire world as equally balanced between merit and guilt. One moral failure can tip the scales for us and for the whole world toward the tide of culpability leading to destruction. But doing one mitzvah can tip the scales for us and for the whole world toward the side of merit, leading to redemption and deliverance for ourselves and for others.
So the book of Proverbs teaches, a righteous person is the foundation of the world. That is, a person who has done what is right, has tipped the balance for the entire world toward merit and saved it. And because of this, it is Jewish practice to give tzedakah generously, to increase acts of goodness, and to focus on performing mitzvot from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, more so than during the rest of the year.
Thank you, Shana Tova. Okay. Page 120. We pray together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvara vo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim, galui v'yadua lifnei kisei kvodecha, she'im yifatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, i'afshar lehitkayem v'la'amod lefanecha. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei kol basar, umafli la'asot. Page 122. Is Alice here? I had a question mark for her. Okay. Pure, my God, is the soul you gave me. You formed it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me. You keep it safe within me. Someday when this soul returns to you, I will find a place in eternity. But as long as spirit breathes within me, I place before you my thanks, eternal God and God of my ancestors, creator of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol basar ish. Page 129. Blessed are the works of your hands, O Holy One. Blessed are the hands that have touched life. Blessed are the hands that have nurtured a child. Blessed are hands that have embraced with love and friendship. Blessed are hands that have planted new seeds. Blessed are hands that have harvested ripe fields. Blessed are hands that have cleaned, washed, mopped, and scrubbed. Blessed are hands that have held pain. Blessed are hands that have become knotty with age. Blessed are hands that are wrinkled and scarred from doing justice. Blessed are hands that hold the promise of the future. Blessed are the works of your hands, O Holy One. We continue in the middle of page 131, and we invite Mark Kaplan to read.
From Psalm 27. God is my light and my refuge secure. Whom shall I fear? God is the stronghold of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? Just one thing I have asked of God, only this do I seek, to dwell in God's house all the days of my life, to behold divine sweetness and beauty, and to gaze in delight at God's temple.
אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יהללו הסלע. אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יהללו הסלע. אשרי who dwell in your house, they will sing your praises forever. Happy are those who dwell אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יחללוך סלע, אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יחללוך סלע.
Page 136, we invite Justin Crick to the bima for the first segment of our shofar service. Blessed are we, and blessed our gathering. As we open our hearts to the voice of the shofar, happy are we who hear its call to return, the sacred trumpet of teshuvah. Blessed are we held close by an ancient sound that echoes lador vador from generation to generation. Happy are we rising to the joyful cry of a new year. Blessed are we to hear in these blasts of sound the voice of community. Happy are we who know its embrace, its season of celebration, its quest for connection and purpose. Holy is this gift of community. Blessed the act of belonging. Shema Yisrael hakdusha shofa'at bakol, alfei revava paneha, milo olam shechinata hakol echad. Hear, O Israel, the divine abounds everywhere and dwells in everything. Its faces are infinite, its source suffuses all. The many are one. We rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmo kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. T'kiyah Shivarim Teruah T'kiyah
Blessed is the soul-reaching sound of the shofar. It proclaims the purpose of this day. Blessed is community, source of joy, solace, and strength to every living soul. Holy One, infinite your power, radiant your glory, unbounded your might, awe-inspiring your works. Hamelech Yoshev al Kisei Ram V'Nisa, majestic God, today enthroned beyond time and space, eternally present, your name is hallowed on high. And the psalmist sang, rejoice in Adonai, you righteous. Let the upright adorn you with praise. Page 142, we remain standing for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, or olam be'otzar chayim, orot me'ofel amar vayehi. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mala haaretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita yif'arucha sela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh kulanu mehera le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. We turn to page 146 and we invite Craig and Sharon Myers to the reading table.
Love abundant, love unstinting, our guide, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers, you gave their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance.
Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach. Preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot.
Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. We have trusted in your great and holy name. Now let us celebrate at last the joy of your salvation.
Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us with upright pride to the land that is ours. For you are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth you sought us out and brought us near to your great enduring truth. So with love we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people Israel with love.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto,
You may be seated. Page 152.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 161. the Israelites walked into the Reed Sea 1 foot at a time. What were they thinking about as the water rose up their legs, chilling their hearts, advancing toward their open mouths? We continue to walk here, now, 1 foot at a time on our better days forward. Alone, I cannot reach the far shore without drowning. Somehow, I don't go under. The person to my right holds me up. Something I cannot see holds him up. Blessed is the source of help, so often unexpected. I step forward. The sea is vast. Page 164.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nara tehilot al sefela, shira chadasha, shibachu geulim, לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צאו ישראל, צאו ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדכנו מלך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
We invite Merle Salkin to the bima, or to the reading table.
They went forth from Egypt on a single night, but next time the miracle will be different. Once 2 sages were walking very early in the valley, and they saw the light of the morning star. Said one to the other, "This is how redemption will be. The dawn breaks with a single ray of light, and bit by bit the sky is illumined until morning comes and darkness is gone. So the redemption will occur, little by little, growing steadily and gradually until the world is full of light. Do not wait for a miracle or the sudden transformation of the world. Bring the day closer, step by step, with every act of courage, of kindness, of healing and repair. Do not be discouraged by the darkness. Lift up every spark you can and watch the horizon for the coming of the dawn. Look closely. It has already begun."
Thank you. Page 166, we rise in body and in spirit for the tefillah.
Adonai sifatai tifta ufi agita hilatecha baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, הגיבור והנורא, אל העליון, גומר חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים, מלך חוזר ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידה מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכה יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
You may be seated. Page 175. Let us embrace the day and its holiness, for this day is a throne of goodness and power. When the people of Israel do God's will, they strengthen God's power on high. But when the people of Israel fail to do God's will, they weaken, if one might say it, God's great power on high. So let this day recall your power and ours. Let it remind us of our promises kept and broken, as we remind you of yours. Let this day be a throne of forgiveness. For today we are the accountants of our souls, the navigators of our hearts, seeking wholeness and new direction. And we seek you through signs of your presence in the arc of sacred history. I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us this day, and with those who are not. God of ages past and future, God of this day, as you were with our ancestors, be with us as well. Page 174. And so let these words of sanctity ascend to you, for you are our God and sovereign.
Unetane tokef kedushat hayom ki hun ora ve'ayom uvot inaseh malchutecha ve'ikol chesed kisecha v'teshev alav be'emet.
Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign is a reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself, for every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. And so a great shofar will cry, Tekiah, a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you, like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds. You decide destiny. You inscribe judgments. Page 179. On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge, sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead opening wide before us. The day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, and some by fire. Some by sword, and some by beast. Some by hunger, and some by thirst. Some by plague, and some by earthquake. Some by stoning, and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease, and some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind. Some will have strife. Some will be tranquil. Some will be tormented. Some will be raised high. Some will be brought low. Some will have riches. Some will be impoverished. Even so, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we meet God's image in ourselves and others, these things have great power to make our lives matter. Therefore, let us make whole the broken shards, green and thick the withering grass. Let the wind fill us with urgency for life. Let dreams give birth to justice and goodness. God of holiness, God of hope, let us glimpse your truth as we attach our hopes to yours. We continue on the top of page 178.
Berosh Hashanah yikatevun, uveyam tzom kippur yechatemun, kama yavorun, v'chama yipareun. Mi yichyeh u'mi yamut, mi v'kitzo u'mi lav'kitzo, mi v'esh u'mi v'amayim, mi v'cherev u'mi v'chaya, mi v'rav u'mi v'tzama, mi v'arash u'mi v'magefa, mi v'chanika u'mi v'sekin. ישקיט ומי יטרף, מי ישלב ומי יתייסר, מי יעני ומי יעשיר, מי יושפל ומי ירום, ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רע הגזרה.
But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You are everything that we... You are everything that we praise you for, slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere. A glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name. And our name you have linked with yours. Page 184, we rise for the Kedusha.
מקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהייך ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד קולך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה.
You may be seated. Page 193. The source of all might is exalted through justice. Hear the words of the Eternal. What need have I of all your sacrifices, says Adonai? I am sated with the burnt offerings of rams, the suet of fatlings, the blood of bulls. In lambs and he-goats I take no delight. They have become a burden to me. I cannot endure them. And when you lift up your hands, I will turn my eyes away from you. Though you pray at length, I will not listen. Your hands are stained with crime. Wash yourselves clean. Put your evil doings away from my sight. Cease to do evil, learn to do good. Devote yourselves to justice, defend the oppressed, uphold the rights of the orphan, plead the cause of the widow, and let justice roll down like waters, righteousness like a mighty stream. Baruch Ha'el HaKadosh V'Hanikdash B'Tzedakah, source of blessing, holy God, we exalt you through our righteous deeds. Page 196. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel, may we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of remembrance. Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova, ufogdenu bo livracha, v'hoshienu bo l'chaim. Eternal God, remember us, be mindful of us, and redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing. God, who is ours and God of our ancestors, in your glory reign over the infinite expanse of space and time. In your grandeur be exalted, through your power show us your reality. Then all who dwell on earth shall understand that you are their maker. Astound us with the beauty of your presence, so that every breath of life shall say, eternal is the God of Israel, all embracing God's rule and sovereignty. Page 200. We are stiff-necked and stubborn. Teach us to bend before you. Convinced we're right, entrenched in our own perspective, we resist your call to repent. Convinced we're self-sufficient, entrenched in the illusion of control, we resist your call to humility. Convinced we can have it all, entrenched in the dream of mastering the world, we resist your call to wake up. Today, you summon us out of our arrogance, out of rigidity, fantasy, shallowness, and self-deception. Teach us to bend our knees, to bow our heads before the mystery, to realize our frailty and our finitude. Teach us to make you Melech, sovereign in our life, to align ourselves with your goodness and truth. We would not bow before Pharaoh. We would not bow before the Persian lord. We would not submit to any power on earth or give ourselves to any material thing. But we, the Jewish people, stiff-necked, stubborn to the end, today we bow before you. Page 202, we rise in body and in spirit. Ours is the duty to praise the all-sovereign, to honor the artist of creation, who made us unique in the human family with a destiny all our own. For this, we bend our knees and bow with gratitude before the sovereign Almighty, monarch of all, the wellspring of holiness and blessing, who spread out the sky and fashioned the land, who dwells in beauty far beyond sight, whose powerful presence is the loftiest height. You are our God, there is none else. We take as true your sovereignty, there is no other. As Torah teaches, embrace and carry in your heart this day, in heaven above, on earth below, the eternal is God, there is no other. You may be seated. Awake, you sleepers, from your sleep. Rouse yourselves from your slumber. Awake like Israel at the sea to the joyful song of Miriam and Moses. Sing to the eternal, for God has surged in triumph. The eternal shall reign forever and ever. Awake like Israel at Sinai to the dignity of being God's partners. You shall be for me a holy nation, a sovereign community of priests. Examine your deeds and return to God. Remember your Creator, you who are caught up in the daily routine, losing sight of eternal truth. you who waste your years in vain pursuits that neither profit nor save. Hear the rousing call to repentance. With trumpets and the blast of the shofar, raise a shout before the eternal, the sovereign. Hear and know the truth of a higher power. God is sovereign, robed in majesty. God is clothed with strength, so the world stands firm and cannot be shaken. Return to God by pursuing justice and right. Majestic one who loves justice, you who established equity, you who worked righteous judgment for Jacob. Look to your souls, improve your ways and your deeds. Let each of you abandon your evil ways, forsake your unworthy schemes. Arise and see the glory of all being. Open yourselves to the light of God. Awake, awake, O Zion. Clothe yourself in splendor. Put on your robes of majesty. Listen well, in silence and stillness is the voice of God. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks, but the Eternal was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Eternal was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Eternal was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound. Through worthy deeds, bring near the day of unity and goodness, a glimpse of perfection. Adonai shall reign over all the earth. On that day, God shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Listen, Israel, Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. We continue on page 205, and I invite Justin Crick to return to the bima. Blessed are the hearts that respond to the majestic music of the shofar. Blessed is the gift of life, the power of renewal that brings us to this day. We continue in the middle of 206, and we rise.
Tkiya, Shivarim, Trua, Tkiya, Tkiya, Shivarim, Tkiya, Tkiya, Trua, Tkiya.
Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out to Kiyah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Malchuyot. You may be seated. Page 208. God, who is ours and God of our ancestors, lead us to holiness through your mitzvot, and may each of us find a portion of Torah that is ours. You bestow such goodness, teach us to be satisfied and to know the joy of your salvation. Help us to serve you truly with purity of heart, for you are a faithful God whose truth stands forever. Baruch atah Adonai melech al kol haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron. Our praise to you, eternal one, whose power pervades all the earth. You bring holiness to the people Israel and to this day of remembrance.
Adonai Eloheinu be'amecha Yisrael u'tefilata be'ahava tikabel b'ratzon u'tehi l'ratzon תמיד עבודת ישראל. ישראל עמך, קרוב לכל קוראיו, פנה אל עבדיך וכוננו. שפוך רוחך עלינו, ותחזינה עינינו, ושובך לציון. ברחמים, ברוך
Page 213. Giver of life and all good gifts, grant us also wisdom to use only what we need, courage to trust your bounty, imagination to preserve our resources, determination to deny frivolous excess, and inspiration to sustain through temptation. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulechana el hodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. Our God, divine presence, whose path our ancestors walked, bless us now with the words first bestowed on Israel in the time of Moses and Aaron, the threefold blessing given us through Torah that joins our hopes with theirs. May you know God's blessings of shelter and care. May it be so. May you receive the light of God's kindness and grace. May it be so. May you see God's favor and goodness. May you partake of God's peace. May it be so.
We continue at the top of that page. Eloheinu v'Elokei avotenu v'imotenu, barecheinu b'bracha המשולשת הכתובה בתורה, האמורה מפי כהנים עם קדושך כאמור. יברכך אדוני וישמרך,
כן יהי רצון.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
כן יהי רצון.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישא
page 217. Let the pursuit of peace and justice be our highest good, and may all people make peace their responsibility. Let Torah be a light that guides our lives toward empathy and understanding, toward generosity of heart. Let peace be our passion, chief among our prayers, every season of the year, every hour of the day.
Page 216. Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, shalom uveracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Sim shalom, sim shalom.
We now invite Natalie Dian to present an original poem. We invite you to the Torah table.
When you were a child, time was a cardboard clock that divided the day into hours and minutes. You moved the big hand and the little hand, and you learned the quarter afters and the half pasts and the quarter ofs. And you learned the meaning of yesterday and tomorrow and soon. When you were a child, time stretched out slowly, endlessly, like a Kansas highway disappearing into a horizon of possibilities. Then you grew up. The road narrowed, the clock ticked faster, so you squeezed the most out of your days, cramming them full of to-dos and must-haves. Time was something you crushed in your fists, and there was no time to waste, and there was no time to dream. Until one winter's day, when everything stopped, and we covered our faces and locked our doors. And in your solitude, you uncurled your fists, releasing time in abundance, time you could no longer measure because it had lost its shape. And you asked yourself, what is the value of time if I can't share it with those I love? The seasons changed, and we took off our masks, only to discover that the virus wasn't done with us yet. And now we know that time is a trickster, robbing us of even the illusion of certainty. So, as we make our way forward, let us learn to number our days. Let us fill them with morning glories and evening primroses and babies and puppies and love and lovers and loved ones and whatever brings us joy. Let us do all the things we always meant to do but never had the time.
Thank you so much. Please take a moment for silent prayer. page 221. Avinu Malkeinu, may we taste anew the sweetness of each day. Renew us for a year of goodness as we ask ourselves, where do I find moments of sweetness and beauty? As a new year begins, where will I devote my best energies? How can I bring more goodness to the lives of others? We turn to page 224. We rise as the ark is opened. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within us and among us. As I pray in Hebrew, please respond in English. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu, we speak this sacred truth aloud. Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha, we stand as one, accountable for our sins. Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Ve'al Olaleinu V'tapenu, we yearn for true compassion for our children most of all. Avinu Malkeinu Kaleh Dever V'cherev V'ra'av Me'aleinu, may we resist the ravages of illness, fear, and despair. Avinu Malkeinu Kaleh Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu,
Let us summon the courage to withstand our enemies.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'sefer Chaim Tovim,
Let the goodness of this gift of life be engraved upon our hearts.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova,
May we taste anew the sweetness of each day.
Avinu Malkeinu Malei Yadenu B'Birchotecha,
Let us wake up to the blessings already in our grasp.
Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu V'Anenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim, Asei Manu Tzedaka V'Chesed V'Hoshienu.
However small our deeds, let us see their power to heal. May we save lives through compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, Hanenu Vanenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Hanenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim, Asei Manu, Tzedaka v'chesed, Asei Manu, Tzedaka v'chesed, V'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim.
It's now my honor to invite up our Board of Trustees to open the Ark and lead our Hakafah and to recite the Aliyah over our Torah reading this morning. And I ask forgiveness in advance if I have forgotten anybody's name. I'm going to try to say everyone, even though I know only some of you are here today in person. And please correct me if I forgot somebody. Ben Adams, Gary Turetsky, Bill Hyman, Justin Crick, Lori Jubileer Langman, Orly Maravenkin, Ruben Honeck, Jeff Margasak, Ben Long, Morgan Selkirk, Nigel Blower, Barry Boyce, Melissa Cohen, David Hyman, Marty Seidman, Robin Shane, Emily Stein, and Ronit Sugar. We're on page 226. We invite you all to the Bima. We are the people of the book. Through fire and mud and dust, we have borne our scrolls tenderly as a baby swaddled in a blanket, traveling with our words sewn in our clothes and carried on our backs. Let us take up the scroll of Torah and dance with it and touch it and read it out, for the mind touches the word and makes it light. So does light enter us, and we shine.
Ein kamacha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'en kamasecha, malchutecha malchut, kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chodor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, l'olam va'ed, Adonai oz lama yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, avarachamim, hetiv avitzoncha, et Zion, tivnech amot Yerushalayim, tivnech amot Yerushalayim, kivechol levad batachnu, melech Aram v'nisa Adon olamim. Adonai, Adonai, erachum v'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, notze chesed la'alafim, nose avon v'pesha v'chata'a v'nakeh.
Adonai, Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to the 1000th generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, and granting pardon.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'norah Shmo, Gadlul Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod, Iho b'shamayim u'va'aretz, Iho b'shamayim u'va'aretz, Lecha Adonai ha'mamlacha, v'hamid Yisrael lechol erosh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ותגל הארץ, ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ותגל הארץ. יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו. יירם הים, יירם הים, יירם הים ומלואו.
And now I'd like to call up Jennifer Streitwieser, who's going to be reading for us this morning. Board, don't go anywhere. You have an Aliyah. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Can we get somebody on this side to hold the eights? You can follow along with our Torah reading on page 240. You ready? Baruch Adonai Hamarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Amen.
Amen. Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ele v'ha'elohim nisa et Avraham. Vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni. Vayomer kachna. Et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha el eretz Amoria v'alehu sham leolah al achad ha'arim asher omar elecha. Vayashkem Avraham baboker vayachavosh et chamoro vayikach et shnei na'arav ito ve'et Yitzchak beno. Vayivaka atzeolah vayakam vayelech el hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim. Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayaret hamakom merachok. Vayomer Avraham el ne'arav shevu lachem poim hachamor va'ani v'hana'ar ne'elcha ad ko v'nishtachaveh v'nashuva aleichem. Vayikach Avraham eratzei ha'olah vayasem al Yitzchak beno vayikach beyado et ha'esh v'et ha'machelet vayelchu shneihem yachdav. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham aviv vayomer avi vayomer hineni vini vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'aitzim v'yehasel olah. Vayomer Avraham Elohim Yir Elo Hasel Eolah B'ni Vayelchu Shneihem Yachdav Vayavohu El Hamakom Asher Amar Lo HaElohim Vayiven Sham Avraham et HaMizbeach Vayaroch et Ha'etzim Vayakod et Yitzchak beno, vayasem oto el hamizbeach mimala eitzim. Vayishlach Avraham et yado, vayikach et hamaachelet, lishchot et beno. Vayikra elav, malach Adonai min hashamayim, vayomer Avraham, Avraham, vayomer hineni. Vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hana'ar v'al ta'as lo me'uma ki ata yadati ki yirei Elohim ata v'lo chasachta et bincha yichidcha mimeni. Vayisa Avraham et einav, vayar v'hine ayil achar, nechaz basfach bekarnav. Vayelech Avraham, vayikach et ha'ayil, vayaleu leolah tachat beno. Vayikra Avraham, Shem hamakom hahu, Adonai Yireh, Asher ye'amer hayom behar Adonai Yera'eh. Vayikra Malach Adonai el Avraham, Shenit min hashamayim. Vayomer Bi nishbati neum Adonai, ki ya'an asher asita et hadavar hazeh, v'lo chasakta et bincha et yichidecha. Ki varech avarechecha, v'harba arbe et zaracha kechol ve'ashamayim, v'chachol asher al sifat hayam, vayirash zaracha et shar oyevav. V'hitbarechu v'zaracha kol goyei haaretz, ekev asher shamata b'koli. Vayashav Avraham el narav, vayakumu, vayelchu yachdav el be'er shava, vayeshev Avraham biver shava.
And so it was that, after these events, God put Abraham to a test. And God said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. And God said, Come, take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah to offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. And Abraham arose early in the morning and harnessed his donkey and took with him his 2 young servants and his son Isaac. And he split the burnt offering wood and rose and departed for the place that God had said to him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place in the distance. And Abraham said to his young servants, You stay here with the donkey, while the boy and I go further on. We will worship and return to you. And Abraham took the burnt offering wood and placed it on his son Isaac, and took it in his own hand the firestone and the knife. And the 2 of them walked together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, he said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Here is the firestone, and here is the wood, but where is the sheep for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will see to the sheep for a burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them walked together. And they came to the place that God had said to him, and there Abraham built the altar and arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac, and placed him on the altar over the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And a messenger of Adonai called to him from heaven, saying, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And the messenger said, Do not lay your hand on the boy. Do nothing to him, for now I know you are in awe of God, since you would not deny me your son, your only one. And Abraham lifted his eyes, and suddenly he saw in the thicket a ram caught by its horns. And Abraham took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham called that place by the name Adonai Yireh, Adonai will see. As it is said to this day, on the mountain of Adonai there is seeing. And a messenger of Adonai called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, By myself I swear, declares Adonai, that, because you have acted thus and would not deny me your son, your only one, I will bless you greatly, and I will multiply your seed like stars in the sky and like sand by the sea. Your seed shall possess the gate of its foes. And all the earth's nations shall be blessed through your seed because you hearkened to my voice. And Abraham returned to his young servants, and they rose, and together they walked to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beersheba.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam atah b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Torah.
Amen. Yishar kochech. We continue with a prayer for healing for all of those in our community who are ill. We hold the names of those who we wish to offer a prayer for healing. We hold all those names in our hearts at this moment.
Page 245. Mishberach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. Mishberach Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, v'Rachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with the vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. Mishberach Avotenu, Mishberach Imotenu, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Page 246, we rise as the Torah is dressed. Just come around and help me.
Vezot HaTorah
אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. אלך עמדה ליבי ושנה וענה תתעלה. אלך עמדה ליבי ושנה וענה תתעלה. אלך עמדה ליבי ושנה וענה תתעלה.
We continue with our reading of the Haftarah. Our blessings can be found on page 247. We invite up Linda Jacobs and Lori Jubileer Langman, who's already here, to read our Haftarah portion, which you can find on page 250.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem הנאמרים באמת, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק.
And there was a man from Ramatayim Tsovim, from the hills of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, God creates, son of Yeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Tzuf, an Ephraimite. And he had two wives, one named Hannah, Grace, and the other named Peninnah, Pearl. Peninnah had children, and Hannah had no children. And this man would go up from his town every year to worship at Shiloh and make offerings to the Eternal of heaven's hosts. And there Eli's two sons, Hophni and Pinchas, were priests of the Eternal. And on the day when Elkanah would make offerings, he would give portions to his wife Peninnah and to each of her sons and daughters. And to Hannah he would give a special portion because he loved Hannah, and the Eternal had closed her womb. And her rival wife would taunt her cruelly to make her tremble with grief, for the Eternal had closed her womb. And so it was year after year. Then she would go up to the house of the Eternal. She taunted her, and she would cry and not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you cry, and why do you not eat? And why are you disheartened? Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? And Hannah arose after eating and drinking at Shiloh, where Eli the priest sat on the throne near the doorpost of the temple of the Eternal. And she, bitter to the core, prayed to the Eternal, weeping and crying. She vowed and said, Eternal of heaven's hosts, if you will truly see your servant's affliction, and remember me, and not forget your servant, and give your servant a son, I will give him to the Eternal all days of his life, and no razor shall be lifted to his head.
And as her praying before the Eternal intensified, Eli watched her mouth. And Hannah, she was speaking only in her heart. Though her lips were moving, her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. And Eli said to her, How long will you persist in drunkenness? Put away your wine, get rid of it. And Hannah answered and said, No, my Lord, a woman of sorrow am I. I drank neither wine nor spirits, but poured out my soul before the Eternal. Do not take your servant for a worthless woman. All this time I have spoken from the depth of my anger, from the greatness of my grievance. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant the request you have made." And she said, "May your servant find grace in your sight." And the woman went on her way, and she ate, and her face was no longer as it had been. And they awoke early in the morning and worshiped before the Eternal. And they went home, returning to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Eternal remembered her. And so it was that at the turn of the year, Hannah conceived, and then gave birth to a son. And she called him Samuel, because I requested him from the Eternal. Thank you.
Our second blessing can be found on page 259.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el hane'eman ha'omer ve'oseh המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום הזיכרון הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ודברך אמת וקיים לעד ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל ויום הזיכרון.
Page 263. A messenger from another time, a stranger here in our midst. The shofar sounds remembrance. Remember, wherever you go, I am with you. After the flood, in the wake of destruction, Noah discovered the rainbow. Alone on a mountain, a knife in his hand, Abraham heard the voice of compassion. At the end of her strength, afraid for her child, Hagar found a well in the wilderness. Remember, wherever you go, I am with you. In sounding the horn, we summon them back. Zichronot, memories of those who saw signs of your presence. A rock gives forth water. Hope can blossom in the desert. And when loving hands lighten our darkness, you are there. When we are caught in the thicket, feel alone or forgotten, the shofar sounds remembrance. From the deep well of our past, in the depths of our own despair, the shofar sounds remembrance. Remember, my presence goes with you and will lighten your burden. Page 267, once again, we invite Justin Crick to the bima. God of remembrance, remember the covenant of our ancestors. We reaffirm it today. Remember, we are a people of noble ideals. Help us to attain them. Remember all your people, all the nations on the road to peace. Bless their efforts. Remember with mercy the binding of Isaac, the sorrow of Sarah, Abraham's words, here I am. Ki zocher kol hanishkachot atahu me'olam, ve'ein shicha lifnei chisei kvodecha. Our memory fades, but you remember all that we have forgotten. Your presence is a throne where all things matter and nothing is lost. Baruch atah Adonai zocher habrit. Blessed are you, Adonai. You remember the covenant. You remember us. Please rise.
Tkiya Shivarim Trua Tkiya Shivarim
The prophet said, "Cry aloud, lift up your voice like a shofar." This is the meaning of the verse. See yourself as a shofar, an instrument of the divine. Do not take pride in your virtue or the power of your deeds. With every mitzvah you do, every act of intellect, goodness, and love, God's Spirit breathes through you. Today, the world is born anew. This day, the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of parents. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiyah. Lovingly, favorably, receive our prayers of Zichronot. You may be seated. We take this moment to offer a prayer for our community. The Blessings We Seek by Rabbi Sabine Meyer. Source of blessing, our guardian and hope, bless, we pray, all who are dear to us. Watch over them with your protecting love. Bless the people of this congregation. Grant them health of body and serenity of spirit. Guide them on the path of Torah and good deeds. Bless our country, our leaders, our fellow citizens and residents. Keep us faithful to our heritage of freedom and justice. Help us banish all suffering and strife. Bless our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel. Prosper the work of their hands and minds. Strengthen them and grant them peace. Bless our fellow Jews wherever they may dwell. Comfort those who are in distress. Deliver them speedily from darkness to light. Bless all your children in every land and community. Unite them in understanding and mutual helpfulness. Hasten the day when all can rejoice in a world of peace. And now we are on page 276. We invite Lisa Landau and Rachel Ezekiel Fishbein to help us return the Torah to the Ark, and we rise. Rav Nachman bar Isaac asked, "Why is the Torah likened to a tree? Just as a small piece of wood may set fire to a large one, so it is with Torah scholars. Young students sharpen the minds of their elders." And Rabbi Hanina said, "Much I have learned from my teachers, more from my colleagues, but from my students most of all."
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shema levado, hadav al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem karen lamo, tehillah lechol Chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati ta'azovu etz chaim lamachazikim ba v'tomchecha meusha derachecha darchet noam v'chol netivotecha shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yamenu Chadesh Yamenu Kekedem.
You may be seated. I want to take a moment to thank everybody who has participated in these services, and especially in this service, the people who have helped us navigate with the giant Torah scroll that I am not allowed to lift because I will throw my back out. I'm thinking maybe we should probably, for everybody's sake, use a different Torah scroll next year. But I'm really grateful to everybody. We're still learning to navigate the new space, and especially with processing with the Torah and the Aliyah, it's a little more complicated than the other things. So thank you, everybody. And we are learning as we go. So I wanted to give at least one sermon this year that was not about the pandemic and was not about the move. So this morning I thought I would address an issue that is on all of our minds, undoubtedly, which is, has the Cat in the Hat been canceled? So if you weren't following this story, this past March, Dr. Seuss Enterprises decided to stop publishing 6 of its titles because they portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. This led to a firestorm on right-wing media, with one channel's hosts claiming over 30 times in one morning show that Dr. Seuss had been canceled. But if I asked you to list as many Dr. Seuss books as you could, I'm fairly certain that these titles would not be the first 6 or even the last 6 that came to mind. And while there was a rush on Dr. Seuss books in general following this announcement, you can now still find The Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham, and Oh, the Places You'll Go on bookshelves around the world. The actions taken by Dr. Seuss Enterprises were meant to be a thoughtful response to complaints that certain ethnic groups were being negatively portrayed in the author's work. According to the company, ceasing the sales of these books is only part of our commitment and broader plan to ensure that our catalog represents and supports all communities and families, with messages of hope, inspiration, inclusion, and friendship. But for many, this was yet another example of cancel culture, a relatively new term used to describe the shaming of celebrities and the boycott of brands in response to insensitive, offensive, or abusive words or behaviors in the public sphere. Lisa Nakamura of the University of Michigan defines cancel culture as a cultural boycott, an agreement not to amplify, signal boost, or give money to. When you deprive someone of your attention, you're depriving them of a livelihood. Canceling someone can be simple and straightforward. Over the last few years, we've seen a number of entertainers be called out for racism, sexual misconduct, and other abuses of power and privilege. Their TV shows and their stage performances were literally canceled. Their public platforms and the income they generated were taken away, hopefully making space for more women and people of color to have their voices heard and to create content. Sometimes cancel culture is a little more complicated. In this age of instant and constant media coverage, someone who makes a mistake or speaks out of turn can be immediately canceled, often resulting in their firing or their removal from the public discourse. In a letter on justice and open debate to Harper's Magazine, over 150 writers and public intellectuals expressed their concern about the increasing calls for swift and severe retribution in response to perceived transgressions of speech and thought. And sometimes, the phrase cancel culture is used as a false flag to shame those who try to hold a person or an institution accountable for their actions, or even, in some cases, to shame those who try to make changes to their own behavior, as certain newscasters did with Dr. Seuss Enterprises. And I think that it is important for us to understand these different interpretations of cancel culture, because we are in grave danger of confusing cancel culture with actual accountability. And at this time of year, when we take stock of our own words and actions, it is essential that we understand the difference. At this season in the Jewish calendar, we engage in the process of cheshbon hanefesh, accounting of the soul. We evaluate our words and actions over the past year and determine how we might do better in the year to come. We take a moment to pause, to consider whether we are on the right path, and if necessary, to reorient ourselves. This turning or returning to the right path is known as teshuvah. Rabbi Paul Kipnis outlines the path of teshuvah in 6 essential steps. We regret our thoughts and actions. We renounce our past behavior. We confess our wrongdoing. We reconcile with those we've hurt. We make amends for the harms we have caused. And perhaps most importantly, we resolve to never engage in the same behavior again. These steps provide us with a significant amount of work to do after we realize that we've made a mistake. But sometimes we can be blind to our own missteps. We might need someone else to call us out and hold us accountable. This is when we must engage in a lesser-known process called tochacha, or rebuke. On Yom Kippur afternoon, we will read from Leviticus 19, otherwise known as the Holiness Code. Right before the famous commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, we hear, "You shall not hate your kinfolk in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor, hocheach tochiach, and not bear guilt because of them." So what does it mean to bear guilt because of our neighbor? The rabbis tell us that anyone who has the power to call out sinful conduct in their household or community and fails to do so will be held accountable for that conduct. We know elsewhere in our tradition that we are all responsible for each other. What we might not always realize is that this responsibility extends to holding one another accountable. It also includes providing a path to repair if repair is possible. And in many cases, it is. A loving rebuke might lead to a meaningful conversation in which the offender might gain a greater understanding of how their words and actions were hurtful. It might lead to real teshuvah, where the offender walks thoughtfully and deliberately through these steps of renouncing their behavior and making amends. It is not enough for a public figure to simply lay low for a few months and then arrange a comeback tour. It is not enough to post a professionally worded non-apology to anyone who may have been hurt by my actions. It might take time, and it might take multiple attempts, and it certainly takes the willingness to acknowledge when we're wrong. Rabbi Kipnis writes, "To renounce our wrongdoings requires honest personal evaluation. We look into our hearts and souls and admit to ourselves that our actions were wrong. No excuses, no rationalizations. We cease to see the action as a necessary consequence of our personality. We distance ourselves emotionally and intellectually from the deed. Renouncing a sin does not mean that we deny that it happened or that we deny doing it. Rather, renunciation means that we reject in any sense that we needed to act as we did." If we never call people out on their negative behavior, this process might never begin. And if we immediately cancel people without providing a path to teshuvah, we deny those at fault the time and space to engage in this process at all. At this point, you might be asking, is the rabbi for cancel culture or against it? And that, in the way, is my point. We cancel people because we want things to fit into neat little boxes, good or bad, with us or against us. But canceling a person or an institution is too black and white in its thinking. I'm equally concerned about the knee-jerk reaction of canceling a person and the knee-jerk reaction of someone crying cancel culture in response to legitimate criticism and calls for accountability. We cancel people or claim that we have been canceled because we don't want to do the hard work of rebuke, repair, and reintegration. So what I'm proposing is that we replace cancel culture with teshuvah culture. How do we create a culture where people have room to make mistakes and repair them? How do we create a culture where people can and do choose to do teshuvah? This question has been on my mind this year in my work with the board of the Women's Rabbinic Network. Following the death of a prominent HUC professor, several former students came forward with claims of harassment and bullying. Some of the victims were criticized for speaking out when they did and told not to speak ill of the dead, especially so close to his death and burial. But their voices brought to light a pattern of silence and secrecy within our movement's institutions, leaving survivors of harassment, discrimination, abuse, and even assault to fend for themselves. This wasn't the only professor who had abused his power, nor was the abuse of power limited to professors at the college. Even worse, these behaviors were an open secret, well known by most movement leaders, but rarely properly addressed. And while there is never a good time, it feels like, to engage in tochacha, this speaking out ultimately led to a moment of reckoning in our movement institutions. The Women's Rabbinic Network called upon the leaders of the movement to respond to complaints with transparency rather than secrecy, accountability rather than enabling of perpetrators, and support rather than silencing of victims. Moreover, the WRN demanded that our movement take a close look at its institutions as a whole in order to develop policies, standards, and procedures to ensure safety for all, including the ongoing promotion of a feedback-rich and retaliation-free environment to support a safe and respectful culture. While this rebuke may have stemmed from painful experiences and disappointment with leadership, the WRN took these steps out of love. They didn't say, "This institution is canceled. We want no part of it." Instead, the WRN called upon the leaders of the movement to do better, all while committing to stay in relationship with the movement while this difficult work is being done. In response to this tochacha, 3 of the major Reform movement institutions, as well as several Reform synagogues, launched independent investigations to see how cases of harassment, abuse, assault, discrimination, and misconduct had been handled in the past. Many of these past wrongs cannot be undone, especially in those situations in which the perpetrator or the victim is no longer alive. But by encouraging the leaders of our movement to engage in this process of cheshbon hanefesh, the Women's Rabbinic Network hopes to create a future in which our Reform movement and the Jewish world writ large are environments of safety and equity that honor the holiness of each human life. Fulfilling this vision is going to be a lengthy and complicated process. Not everyone is happy about these grievances being aired publicly, and not everyone will support the work that must be done. But it is only by engaging in this tochacha that we can hope to create a culture where real repair and meaningful change is possible. On the one hand, it isn't in line with our Jewish values to cancel someone forever. Teshuvah is meant to be an ongoing process that someone can begin at any time and keep working at until the wound is healed. On the other hand, in order to do teshuvah, a person or an institution must be called out and held accountable so that they can take responsibility for their words and actions. To do so is not cancel culture, even if it means that a person loses their job, their media platform, their sponsors, or their customers. Making space for someone to do teshuvah doesn't necessarily mean that they get to keep all of the money, power, fame, and influence that they already had. It doesn't mean that the people they hurt will immediately be ready to hear what they have to say, to accept apologies, or to offer forgiveness. It doesn't mean that the offender won't experience anything painful or difficult during their teshuvah process, or that it won't take a lifetime of resolving to do better every single day. It simply means that we recognize the humanity of those who have hurt us and give them an opportunity not to be defined by their worst thoughts, words, and actions. Not everyone will take that opportunity. Sometimes a person or an institution doubles down on their words or their actions, and tochacha feels like a fool's errand. But we need to create a culture where people who speak up are heard and listened to, and not shamed for standing up for themselves. And we need to make sure that the burden of tochacha is not placed entirely on an individual victim speaking out. It can be difficult to hear rebuke, to admit that we were wrong, and to take responsibility. This is something I find myself having to do often as the leader of a faith community. We might get defensive or try to explain that this isn't who we are. And maybe it isn't who we are, or more likely who we imagine ourselves to be in our best moments. But it is how our words and actions have affected people. That's what we need to change so that we can proudly say, this is who we are. It can be equally difficult to accept an apology and truly forgive someone, because that too might involve acknowledging that we were wrong about someone. Not about the harm they've done, that's still true, but about their ability to reflect, repent, and change their ways. All of this is difficult because it requires us to stay in relationship with one another, even when we have been hurt, even when we know we have made a mistake and are embarrassed. It requires us to wrestle with what has been done and what needs to be done so that we can continue that relationship and perhaps even make it stronger. Kimberly Foster, leader of the Black feminist community for Harriet, explains that changing culture means meaningfully approaching folks from the standpoint of these harmful ideas you are perpetuating need to go. We're not going to accept this anymore, but the people themselves can be recovered. Whether it's an author or an actor, a politician or a journalist, an academic institution, a family member, a colleague, or a friend. Sometimes people disappoint us with their words or with their actions. We owe it to ourselves and to the people who've let us down to call them to account and to tell them how they can do better. And when someone opens our eyes to a mistake that we've made, we owe it to ourselves and to the people that we've hurt to examine our behavior and seek to repair the damage. We owe it to ourselves and to those we love to stay in relationship with one another while we do the hard work of rebuke and repair. We owe it to ourselves and to each other to remember that as long as we are willing to do the work, it's not too late to change. Shana Tova. Our service continues on page 83, and we invite Karen Germankin to the reading table.
We know that poverty must cease. We know this through the brokenness and conflicts in our hearts. We know that protest is our most prophetic act and that the world is longing for a new soul, a new healing moment. We know that when we awaken to our origins and become truly human, we bring hope to the children and to the earth. We feel called today to bring the people together to break bread and tell the story. We feel called today to be mystics in action, aligned to the dynamics of the universe. We feel called today to give our hearts, to listen to the heartbeats of the broken world, to heal the fragmentation of people and planet. We feel called today to celebrate the wonder of creation and respond to the sacredness and the challenges of life. We feel called today to participate in the work of our time, to fall in love, to feel at home. We feel called today to be inflamed with enduring hope, to be at one with the universe, to be touched by God. We feel called today to compose a new paragraph for life.
Thank you. We once again invite Justin Crick to the bima. Baruch atah Adonai shomea kol truat amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel. Please rise.
Tkiya Shivarim Trua Tkiya Shivarim Tkiya Trua Tkiya Gedola
Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of parents. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out to Kia. Lovingly, favorably, receive our prayers of Shofarot. Page 286, we remain standing for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו ושכינתו זו וגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו ובזולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והחשבותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת, אין עוד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Page 290. Alas for those who never sing, but die with all their music in them. Let us treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to ease some suffering, to love and be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. There is promise within each of us that only we can fulfill. Let us live our lives so that someday it will be true to say of us, the world is a little better because for just one moment they lived in it. This week we mourn the recent passing of Ethel Rabinowitz, aunt of Barry Steinbrecher, and Robert Shore, uncle of Michael Levin. We are also observing the yahrzeit of Frances Fallon, mother of Janet Fallon, Ray Holtzman, grandmother of Rosalind Holtzman, Alex Hyman, uncle of David and Bill Hyman, Ruth Marcus, aunt of Ellen Horowitz Matz, Stuart Matz, father of Michael Matz, Rose Salkin, mother of Stanton Salkin, Sophie Z. Shapiro, family of Rabbi Elliot Holin, and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We hold these names in our hearts, and we take a moment to add other names silently before we recite Mourner's Kaddish. Page 292, we rise. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divarach yirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chaye chon u'v'yome chon u'v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Bagala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabba mevarach leolam u'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. V'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen.
Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen.
You may be seated. It's now my honor to invite up Gary Turetsky, one of our co-presidents, to say a few words of welcome.
I want to begin by saying thank you. Thank you for the honor to serve as co-president of this remarkable congregation with my friend Ben Adams. Next, I'd like to say welcome to our new home and our new sanctuary, made so beautiful and inspiring in such a short period of time by the dedicated efforts of our executive director, Elaine Stevens, Rabbi Berkowitz, our cantorial soloist, Rebecca Schwartz, our education director, Rachel Simon, our past president, Reuben Honeck, our board of trustees and executive committee, and the many extraordinary volunteers who stepped up to the challenge of moving us and settling us into this new space and making it ours, making it Kol Ami. Rosh Hashanah, it is said, is a time to express gratitude. Please join me now in showing our gratitude and appreciation to our staff, our board, and those wonderful volunteers for making this gathering together in worship and celebration, whether in person or virtually, possible. Besides being about gratitude, Rosh Hashanah, says Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, is about relationships. He writes, whether between individuals and the God in whom they believe, communities and the traditions which define them, or simply between individuals, Rosh Hashanah is all about sustaining relationships which sustain us and help us do the same for others. The question of how we sustain relationships which sustain us has never been more important and more challenging than today. The pandemic, sadly, is still with us and affecting our lives in ways we could never have imagined just 2 years ago. At its peak, the pandemic demanded of us, for our safety and the safety of others, to live in isolation, to be masked, and to socially distance. Even today, with the introduction of miracle vaccines, we still, for the time being, must wear masks indoors and refrain from handshakes, hugs, and kisses. So how do we sustain relationships that sustain us and help us do the same for others in such an environment? For all of us here today, old and new members of this congregation, we have learned many times over these past few difficult years that the answer to that question has been, and I pray will continue to be, Kol Ami. It has been Kol Ami with its mission of creating and sustaining an intimate and purposeful Jewish community that has kept us together and our relationships and community strong. Despite COVID, despite the physical separation, Kol Ami provided all of us with the essentials of community, as it always has. It may have been over Zoom, but we could enjoy with our friends afternoon teas with the rabbi, Friday night services with oneg conversation and schmoozing afterwards, Saturday morning services with Torah study sessions, and adult education programs for all interests, ranging from the writing of ethical wills and the meaning of prayer to Israel's security and Jewish movies. Our religious school maintained relationships for our children and their parents as we continued to offer a strong curriculum focused on Jewish literacy, Hebrew fluency, moral teachings, celebration of holidays, and the love of Israel. And our committees also sustained our relationships. Committee members continued, despite the pandemic, to serve the synagogue and the community. They came together to hold interfaith dialogues, sponsor Israel-themed programs, and support social action programs. Volunteers stayed together and grew stronger in their relationships while continuing to contribute to food distribution for the needy through the SHARE program, providing assistance to congregants through our Caring Congregants Committee, advocating for the LGBTQ community, and organizing to make phone calls and write postcards to defend voting rights. Our choir continued to meet virtually and record songs to brighten our services, and Rebecca's talent and energy enabled our student choir to enhance Friday night services with their beautiful voices and faces. In short, we may have been physically apart, but our relationships, our community, were sustained because of Kol Ami, our gift to ourselves that keeps on giving. Kol Ami, this gift to ourselves, has survived now for over 25 years, and it will continue to survive and I believe grow and prosper in our new home because of the contributions all of you have made, which allows Kol Ami to meet its mission of creating and sustaining an intimate and purposeful Jewish community that kept us together and our relationships strong. My thanks to all of you for your valuing and supporting that mission and for wanting to be part of our community. And I wish everyone a Shana Tova, a happy and sweet new year. Now at this Rosh Hashanah, as I mentioned at the start, we want to share our gratitude for so many things, and I would be remiss if I did not express on behalf of the congregation our great appreciation to the leadership and members of Beth Shalom congregation for all the help and kindness shown us as we moved here to continue Kol Ami's mission. In particular, I want to extend sincere thanks for the friendly welcome and assistance provided to us by Beth Shalom's executive director, Robin Minkoff, their rabbi, David Glansberg-Cranen, and their president, Herb Sachs. And Herb is with us here today to extend greetings as we celebrate our first new year in this, our new nesting place. So let's welcome Herb Sachs.
Hello, Kol Ami friends. On behalf of Beth Shalom congregation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to your new home. We're delighted you are here with us as we start the new year. I hope you will forgive us for the fact that not everything is quite in place yet, but we are committed to moving as quickly as possible to get everything right. All of us at Beth Shalom are anticipating the burst of new energy that will result from your being here. We eagerly look forward to working with you on social action programs and other initiatives that will serve to strengthen both of our congregations as well as the Jewish community on the Old York Road corridor. Thank you again for choosing Beth Shalom as your new home, and please accept our best wishes for a happy and healthy new year. Thank you.
I learned this at summer camp. We give warmth. Thank you, Herb, and thank you, Gary. Excuse me. I had a list of thank yous, and they have disappeared. Here they are. Okay. So we have a lot of people to thank in addition to everyone who has just been thanked. Simon Rosenwasser and Kevin and their team at Play by Play Productions, Jeff Cohen and Justin Crick, who have given so much time as volunteers. So we have professionals and volunteers working together to give us this incredible experience, both here and online, even in this new space. We want to thank Rebecca, and Franz Sirkin, and our adult choir for making beautiful music, even though the circumstances are sometimes challenging. We want to thank our operations committee, and particularly today we want to thank Alex Miller, who was in charge of all of the beautiful signs that helped you to get here this morning. We want to thank our reopening task force, who was in charge of deciding what the procedures would be so that we could be in this space together, which is really a gift that we're able to do so in a safe way. Of course, Elaine Stevens, our executive director, for all the work she does behind the scenes so that we can be together. Our friends at Beth Shalom Congregation for welcoming us with open arms and helping us to feel safe and secure in this new space. And all of you who complied with safety precautions in order to be here, as well as all of you who figured out all of the different technologies to be able to watch us online at home. We are so grateful for all of you. This really is a community that it is a blessing to be a part of.
And thank you, Rabbi, for all you do and all you are.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted to also let you know, it looks like the weather is going to cooperate. We have a family service at 2 o'clock at the home of Jack and Morgan and Harper and Jack Selkirk. There is an online option, and we also have Tashlich tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Wall Park, and there is an online option as well. Those are all the online listings, as well as the locations, are available on kolamielkinspark.org. So we are hoping that you will be able to join us for that. And we continue with a blessing for the new year on page 294. Hayom te'amsenu, strengthen us on this day. Hayom tevarchenu, bless us today. Hayom tegadlenu, lift up our lives on this day. Hayom tidrashenu l'tova, grant us goodness today. Hayom tichtavenu l'chaim tovim, inscribe us for a good life on this day. Hayom tishma shvatenu, hear our heartfelt words today. Hayom tekabel v'rachamimu v'ratzon et tfilatenu, on this day receive our prayers with love. Hayom titmechenu b'min sidkecha, fortify our best intentions. May we go forth today to do your righteous work. Amen. Our closing song can be found on page 299.
Ein Eloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kimalkenu, ein Kamoshienu, mi Eloheinu, mi Kadonenu, mi Kimalkenu, mi Kamoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkenu, Atahu Moshienu.
On page 300, we join together in blessings over wine and bread and apples and honey.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min haaretz b'te'avon. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz.
Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, shetechadesh aleinu shana tova u'mituka. Our God and God of our ancestors, eternal God of all generations, may your presence in our lives this new year renew our spirits and renew our strength. May it be a good year, may it be a sweet year. We invite up Justin Crick for our final shofar blowing. Sorry for the short notice.
You needed time to chew.
Oh, and my microphone's off.
תקיעה גדולה. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום, וישם לך שלום.
May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God lift up God's countenance upon you, and may you know the blessing of peace. Can you hear it, song?
לשנה טובה תיכתבו, לשנה טובה תיכתבו, תיכתבו ותחתמו.
לשנה טובה.
שנה טובה.